2, 1. Hello everyone and welcome to another HMG podcast. So I've got a bit of a special one today with a community spotlight episode. So this is a format that we're starting up where we are getting members of our actual community to come and talk, and we've got a series of generic questions today. This may become a bit more of a regular feature as we go through, and we'll see how much everyone likes it and whether they enjoy the format. So I have with me today Bob, Adam, Sean, who are all from our WA community, and we also had some additional answers submitted by Russ and Nic, and so they're 5 members of Perth, or actually Perth and Albany, all the way across WA. And we should have some very interesting questions. So we're going to jump straight into it because the first one is going to give you a bit of a background as to these individuals, their experience with gaming and where they sit with bolt action. So I'll start with the question and then I'll hand it off to the individuals to answer. So question 1, in a brief answer, how long have you played war games for? And how much of that time have you played bolt action? So I'll pass this across to start with Bob.
I started my wargaming about 2017, around about August then, playing the Gateway plastic crack Star Wars X-Wing, because you just bust it out of the box and it's ready to go, no painting, no nothing. And then I moved into Legion, MCP. I've got some Lord of the Rings stuff that I've been carrying with me for 20 years that I never played until this year, but I started with some bolt action about 2 years ago after seeing some guys playing in our local store, and mechanics looked good and World War II, and just got a starter box and went from there.
Some very good introduction games that you've listed there though. I played both of those myself, they're very good. What about yourself, Adam?
I've only been playing bolt action for less than 2 years, and that's my only war game so far. Obviously, a bit of Dungeons and Dragons before that, and I've painted the odd battle game in Middle Earth and 40k mini in the past just for fun. But this is my first wargaming experience.
Yeah, so you're actually quite on the fresh edge of wargaming and coming to understand some of the things. Yeah, okay, no, that's good. What about yourself, Sean?
Wow, way to make me feel old. I started playing wargaming when I was, it would have been early 90s, maybe even like late 80s. I've actually got a original Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader hard copy still in my games room right now.
Very nice. Very nice.
So I started playing Warhammer 40k as my game, and it went from there. And the first World War II games that I played was the 15mm Flames of War. And then when Bolt Action first came out, first edition, I jumped into Bolt Action first edition as soon as it appeared. I don't know how many years ago that was.
I think it was I want to say 2013, but it might have been.
Yeah.
Might have been 2000.
As I said,
yeah.
As soon as it hit the shelves, my play group picked it up and we ran with it.
Yeah, that's I'm not necessarily as long in the tooth as you, but I'm getting close. However, Russ reckons he started wargaming at the age of 5. Now, knowing Russ, I don't actually put that past him. I reckon that's pretty legitimate. He loves his war games. He says originally did it with Airfix and 1/72nd scale, typically with homebrew miniatures before discovering DBA and wargaming at Perth Napoleonics. He also is someone who jumped onto Bolt Action version 1 as soon as it came out. His play group were already doing Operation Overlord, which he suspected there may have been some influences already with Alessio in that space. The games are quite similar, and so everyone in their group moved to Bolt Action as it was the newer, more refined version of what they were playing. And so it was, he's also been playing for quite a long time. And then Nic Nick's been playing since 2001, Wargames since 2001. Started with Warhammer Fantasy Battle and Mordheim. Took a hiatus from about 2015, 2017, as he writes, after the murder of the Warhammer Fantasy Battle setting. Got back into 40k around 7th edition, and then also jumping into bolt action, which has then become his primary game system since. So Nick's he's tried to get to a few different events and has had a challenging work schedule, but he's said that he's going to try and make more in 2024, and the new calendar is going to give him a lot of opportunity to make that happen. So hopefully we see him a bit more popping around. Those that have listened to the podcast already know my story, and if you want to go listen to it, just jump back onto episode 1. I'm not going to repeat the 3-hour episode that it turned into. So then question 2 for the group. In the context of bolt action, do you have a favourite unit? And any reason for it being a favourite unit is actually valid in this one. So again, I'll pass to Bob.
Yeah, look, mine's sort of come out of what I own. I did list quite a few games that I have, and I still have all the minis, and my wife is always telling me to clean out the shed. But I bought a para box as my starter army, so I just play British paras. That's my force. I did buy a new army when I was in the UK recently. I got to go to Warlord games, but there was no question I could slip that in, so I just slipped it in now. But no, I have Gurkha paras in a Bren carrier with SMGs. I know that's not one unit, but that's how I play them. 15 points for 5-man squad, so 75-point squad in a Bren carrier. Hits really hard, dies really hard, and it's only 5 men, and people are scared to let you get close because you get so many benefits in hand to hand, and you don't get the penalty for moving and shooting, and the Bren carrier gets to where you need to be. So I feel that that's probably my favourite thing, and it's probably a crutch for me. I always make sure I've got at least 2 in any army that I ever put on the board if I'm going to some sort of tournament. I love that combo. I think it works really well.
I don't think you're being fair necessarily to say that it's a crutch for you. I think whilst they are a good unit, you do have to use them well. But no, I think that's a very good opportunity and selection there. What about yourself, Adam?
Yeah.
Well, at the risk of being a bit boring and possibly a bit derivative, I was going to say my favourite unit is Veteran Paras, basically because that's the only army I've got is Polish Paras, so Polish Paras with different coloured hats, and but basically only because tend to stay alive for a while no matter how badly I command them. I haven't had much consistent luck with any other small team or vehicle, so those the plucky Poles know how to hunker down and stay alive most of the time.
Yep, that's it.
Paras are great.
That's it. See, paras are an interesting spot for me because the Soviet ones don't get stubborn, and that's largely because if they did, they'd be one of the most broken units in the game because with the combining of the national rules. But yeah, I'm sort of like, I like them, but the ones that I typically started with, they weren't as good as everyone else's paras. What about you, Sean? Are you also para?
3 for 3.
No, I don't own a single para in my entire collection. I've got Rangers, German mechanized reconnaissance, and Russian naval brigade. Mm-hmm. So to throw a sort of a spanner in the works, I'm going to have to give you 2 favourite ones, but one of them you can probably disregard straight away. My favourite one is a nice little surprising unit in the Russians is my Ampulette launchers.
Yep.
I love my little Ampulette launchers because they are essentially a short-range, direct-fire, light howitzer for 40 points that can hurt any tank that comes at me because it has that special rule that it can set fire to any vehicle even if it doesn't have the ability to penetrate it.
Yeah.
Which means if I hit a vehicle, I'm going to put pins on it either way.
Yeah, I've had to fight them. I don't.
I love them. I love them because they count as anti-tank, which means being Russian, you can take 3 of them as one selection.
Yeah.
And of course, because I'm playing Naval Brigade, my favourite unit has to be my big Bronicator, my boat.
I mean, they are wargame models. That's the one. That's the one that has the tank turret on the front, or the rocket launcher, and several machine guns splattered around the place. And
it comes with one tank turret and 3 MMG turrets. You can replace one of the MMG turrets at the back with another tank turret or the rocket launcher. You can upgrade all the machine gun turrets to be twin MMGs, or you can upgrade them to be a heavy machine gun, or you can upgrade them to be twin heavy machine gun. It's like, it's fun.
Yeah, how many guns do you want? All of them, please.
Yes, please. Yeah. Watch this space. We might have something coming up to sort of make all the people out there in Perth, because there is a community of Bronicator lovers, just like there's a team of heavy tank lovers. There are Bronicators. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing what shenanigans that entails, because it certainly will be something. And then, so passing across to Russ. Russ is the way that Russ plays. If you've ever fought against him or watched him play, he's very tactical, or certainly when he was playing regularly. He was in a very tactical space, was able to do quite a lot with tools that didn't necessarily look like they could achieve a lot. So he actually loves basic rifle squads. You get so much variety in what those rifle squads can do in what really is considered a basic unit, and it really sets the tone for the rest of your army. So rifle squads typically are the units that will benefit the most from just innate national characteristics. You don't pay any extra points, but you get to leverage any rule that comes. So typically, him having played Soviets and British in the past, those 2 sets of national rules in particular, they are quite beneficial to just your basic rifleman. And obviously the other one that he's played before is Japanese. So, and getting 3-point fanatics on all your troops for no cost is a massive boon on those troops. Nick went a little bit, not quite the same, but a little bit the same as Bob did, where he's like, I'm going to give you 2, which is US Combat Engineers regular. So 90 points for 8 men. You get 2 BARs. They go in a Dodge truck. They could walk, but realistically a Dodge truck gives them that mobility. It's the perfect number. 8 fits in 8. And they become a Swiss Army knife unit with SMGs and a flamethrower. So they're a great, cheap unit that is flexible and has a lot of synergy with rules on their weapon loadout and how you can maneuver them and use them in that truck. So very similar in the sense of the unit becomes better, and I like it more because I can use the transport to leverage it, move them around, get them moving and into a space that they can be very, very effective. So he's saying that he typically would always put one of those sets in his lists as well. So what is then one thing in bolt action that sticks out to you? Now this should be an interesting question considering the spectrum of experience that we've got. So Bob, what is something that sticks out to you for bolt action?
I got 3, because obviously I don't follow instructions well. No, the thing that really got me, I've realised I'm a mechanics kind of guy when I find games that I really like. So the main thing that really got me into liking bolt action was the order dice mechanic. So X-Wing's got the dials, Legion's got, you put orders and cart, you've got to bid for who wants to go first. And I just really like that whole idea of, you need the dice to come out sometimes, you don't want it to come out other times, and that really adds some tension to the game that I think if it was a you go, I go, turn, unit for unit, or 40k, I move everything, you move everything, I think the game would lose part of that drama that it has, that you need a dice when you need it, and invariably it always, the other person gets theirs. I think the rifle being a rifle, the guns being very similar across everything. You're not having to remember, all right, you've got this kind of weapon and this weapon in this army does this one, and I like that part of it. And the country flavour, and that seems to be, most of it seems to be quite on point with it, and they've done quite a good job of making each country and each nation feel like that. So sorry if I've stolen on someone else's with taking 3, but those are the 3 things that really hit me with bolt action and sucked me in quite quickly into the game once I started.
Yeah, no, I think they're all very good things. Adam?
Yeah, continuing the theme of not having more than one. Yeah, because my thing was everything. I like the historical aspect, painting, relatively easy rules / low bar for entry, and I guess if I had to narrow it down to one thing, it'd probably be just the welcoming and friendly community. Just come in off the street without knowing anything about anything, and everybody's been helpful and nice and not crunching me too much in tournaments and things like that. So yeah, that's like that.
Well, that is good to hear, because we do try not to not to have new people get absolutely slaughtered without learning or without having a chance to give a few punches themselves. But okay, well, no, that's good. And Sean, I don't know if there's anything left after those two, but what have you?
Well, I was gonna say I'll just probably expand a little bit on what Bob said about mechanics, because going from, as I said, first edition Rogue Trader, Warhammer 40,000, I've gone through all the clunky mechanics that they had for that game system, from transparent overlays that you put on different vehicle silhouettes to see where you want to shoot and that sort of thing. And the simple mechanics and the thing that, the order dice adds that level of tactical thought into the game, because it's like representing the fog of war. You don't know when you're going to be able to get your units to activate. You don't know when your opposition is going to be moving their guys. That mechanism is just it's just great for representing, I think, the chaos of actual battle, and the historic point that Adam was talking about. I'm a nerd when it comes to military history. My family's like 4 or 5 generations Australian Army, and yeah, I'll go into a silly little hole and just follow it all the way down and research units and find out what I want to know to make a bolt action army.
I think that's very cool. I'm only just at the front end of researching into army lists that I construct, and I've found it to be very, very rewarding, because I may not be a history nerd yet. I'm working on getting into that space. I'm not surprised that the points you've raised are points that have come up for that particular question. Some of them are actually quite common for when you ask anyone around the world about what sticks out for bolt action. The dice order mechanic is, in the simplicity of the game, are typically ones that always come to the fore. Russ said, yeah, look, there's a lot of things. It's probably primarily the community. We have some of what would be considered, I guess, the better elements of other gaming communities that are around. However, we've got a definite relax and I guess a perspective on making sure both players are having fun. There's only so much you can, in our current scene, there's only so much you can really grind out an overpowered army, and we seem to have a natural way of keeping that in check. And he enjoys talking to fellow wargamers and about the history and things they're passionate about. He thinks it's something that really benefits us for bolt action. It probably is the same for other systems as well in Perth, which we've said before, but yeah, definitely for him that's a big driving factor. And for Nick, yeah, he absolutely is like simple rules mechanics. It doesn't require me to check erratas or FAQs every couple of seconds, or if I haven't played games in months. Like, I can play, take a break off due to a period of time for whatever reason, I can come back, and even if there has been some change, it's so simple to pick up what those changes are that it's like it hasn't changed at all. It's very easy to transition back into playing after a while. Some war games are not like that. Some war games can change quite happen quickly, or they can have significant changes to how things work, and not just 40k stuff. I'm talking other war games that I've played before where I'm like, okay, so prior to this edition of this book it did oh no, it's all different now. Okay, well, all right then. But bolt action probably, I suspect, even if a rumored V3 comes, at Nick's point that, you know, it's not going to change too drastically, is probably going to hold true. So then, given that our current schedule of events is developing, I've now put out the brochure of start putting dates towards things to plan for next year. What are the things that you like to see that draw you to an event? So again, leading off with Bob.
Well, I'm slightly different, I think, from the other guys because I'm down in Albany. So for anyone who's not listening from WA, where I'm 4-hour drive just from the city. So for me to come up, it's a big deal. So I generally, if it's on a Saturday, is a big deal for me. Sundays, it's just sometimes a bit too hard to leave straight away to get home for work on Monday. If there's really nice prizes, I like to think that I might have a chance of winning one day, and that's always a big thing for me. Is if there's cool prizes, then it's nice to come home with something shiny. And I find the events I've been to, there's always something. I'm always come home with something cool. And look, I'm an aspirational gamer, I suppose, and I always try to get to Perth for the other systems if there's a Worlds type deal going on, and as there doesn't seem to be an organised play style system quite yet with Warlord. If they get that off the ground and there's qualifiers and things like that, then I would happily travel to Sydney or Melbourne for those sorts of things. I like that idea. As I'm an older man now, I'm almost 50, even though I don't behave like it. This is my competition outlet now, so I can't really play really competitive sports. I can play for fun, but this is sort of my competitive outlet as well. So, I'd really like one day to say that I actually went to a Worlds for one of the games that I play. That is my dream. So if Warlord get off the ground, something along those lines, then yeah, I would be there in a heartbeat. I'll make that happen. If you had on a Wednesday afternoon, I would turn up to that. That's sort of big on my list of things.
Cool. That's very cool, actually, to consider. I know that there are some events that are run internationally that claim to be a world setup, but they're not quite a world setup in the way that you're talking. But yeah, very, very, very good points. Adam.
That was all interesting. I sort of can relate to the. Jeez, I lost my train of thought. Forget that bit. I was just going to say that I just like the fact that there's a semi-regular schedule, well, more regular now, that there's events coming along fairly regularly, so just the fact that there's a variety means you can pick and choose what you are interested in. Obviously, still being at the early stages, the sort of the more vanilla stuff, I guess, is just wrapping my head around the basic rules at this stage, so I don't want to stray too far from getting crazy. I can imagine the guys that have been playing it for years and years are probably looking for different challenges, but I'm not quite there yet. So yeah, just an opportunity to get out and roll dice and push models around is good enough for me. I'm not looking for much beyond that at this stage.
Well, that is certainly something that for 2024, so far it looks like we're going to be able to make sure that there's opportunity for you to do that. Sean.
I am a big fan of themed events. So, for example, we've got the 3-a-side coming up, I think.
Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers, where it's a team of 3 against another team of 3.
Yeah.
I think for the last 2 years of that, I've been Albany's make weight. So the team comes up from Albany, and someone hasn't been able to come up, and I've joined the Albany team that's come up in the last 2 years. And the Southern Thrust game that was on last year, it was themed around early war. I didn't have an early war army, but it gave me motivation to grab a few different models and make up an early war army and get in my car and drive down to Albany. It was great.
That is also something which we're trying to look at as to how can we make sure that we have, like, running events is fine. We don't want them all to suddenly just become vanilla because, we know what we're doing now. It's like, no. We want to make sure that it's applicable for everybody to try to come to at least some of them. And what's the theme? Drive that theme part home so that we can actually, as you say, provide inspiration for someone who, really enjoys that aspect of the hobby, to make sure that we're servicing that as well. But no, I'm glad you called that out. So from Russ's view on things that he's looking at events or things that will draw him to events, he started with literally anyone that I can actually get to, work and kids permitting, which I can 100% relate to.
Yeah.
Yes. He really wants to get down to Albany and even down into Bunbury for events there. Unfortunately, he just has not had the opportunity to do so. And unfortunately, he was missing out on the most recent skulls as well. So he's had a couple of events he's not been able to get to, so he's looking forward to getting to a few more. Nick's point of view actually dovetails a little bit with one of your responses, Bob. So Nick really likes seeing prize support at events that is specifically not cash, so actually something that they can use in their hobby as a bonus, as a reward for effort that's being put through, as opposed to just a cash prize. But also having an event structure that doesn't require you to be a win-at-all-cost style gamer, and to clarify where he's talking about win-at-all-cost gamers in that space, the intent is pushing for absolutely every single point at every single opportunity, and make sure that it keeps the games that are thematic, or the gamers who do just want to come and have fun, push some models around, roll some dice, and be in the running for, be it raffle prizes, door prizes, whatever. When you are not forcing your structure to support a win-at-all-costs approach, because the prize support is equitable for everybody to come. So sometimes we will have competitive things that do drive more that way, but yeah, certainly on Nick's point of view, he's glad when they don't go that way, because he also doesn't get around to too many tournaments. So now, of course, this question, and I really struggled about whether I put this question in, but I think considering that I asked you what you like, it's only fair that I also ask you what you don't like, and what are the things that we've been doing that you're like, oh, we don't really like that so much. So Bob, how can I improve? What are the things that are happening at events that are a bit on the nose, or the things that you probably would want to see drop away?
Look, you talk to a few people down here. Apparently, I'm super gamey, so mine is more of a structural thing in your tournaments. So, a few times I've been up and I'm unclear on how you figured out tiebreakers. So, like in a lot of games, like especially FFG and AMG games, they have a set tournament structure. So it's strength of schedule, or it's margin of victory, that kind of stuff, and maybe it was me not reading the pack properly, which is a common theme of mine as well. But it's more just knowing where I'm going to fit and what I need to do in the next match. So do I need to absolutely towel someone up, or do I just need to get a win, or that side of things? Because that's how when I first started playing competitively in stuff, that's how I look at when I'm at tournaments. Right, how do I achieve the best result that I can, and or does it not really matter how I go here because it's just on wins or whatever? So that's just me personally. Other than that, I haven't really, except having to play Calder Jackson every time I come to a tournament, I haven't really had any problems with the way things are structured. So yeah. So yeah, that was my only feedback anyway.
That's all right.
Yeah.
And just for transparency, I am recording some generic notes here, so we can actually take the feedback on and make it better.
Oh yeah, no, that's all good, man. That was all good. Yeah, no, like I said, I haven't really. The tournaments always run really well, and everyone's welcoming, and it's pretty good. There's only little things, but they're stuff you have to deal with in a game. That's not actually anything to do with the way you're running your tournaments. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Adam.
Good.
Yeah, I don't really think I have much to, if anything, to complain about. Obviously, haven't been to a lot, and my experience means it's I haven't got a new frame of reference to compare it to anything. So I was just going to say that like the variety in the events. So this means that if you like something, there's events that you do like is going to come along eventually. You're not going to please everyone, so the variety just means that something will come along at some stage. Any feedback I'd probably add to that, probably relating into the last point as well, was just I think somebody mentioned themes, like I think the last Albany one was early war, so putting a year range or a campaign or special forces or something, I guess, would bring even different points or escalation or something like that, just to keep that variety going in theme, so it's not just all generic reinforced platoons all the time. That's it for me.
That's all right. Again, thank you very much. Some good points there. Even though you're newer within, I guess, the overall scene, your opinion, your input, your feedback definitely still matters. Sean.
I have no complaints except one. There's not enough water for me to put my bronnicator on.
Yeah. Not enough rivers. Got it.
Right. They have to be wide enough so you can turn the bronnicator around and go back the other way.
Oh, so like
No, just thin rivers, and he just goes one way.
Yeah, it is.
Literally, there's nothing.
The deployment zone to the edge of the board.
Straight across.
I'll have to get you to come around to my place sometime, Daniel. I've actually been testing and working out the width of rivers and things that I need to be actually model up. So I'll show you what I've done so far.
I do feel that there is something between yourself and Chris Ramsey, who's also another big fan of the wonderful river tank boat thing. I very much think that surely there's something we can do to make a really, really fun themed event around like naval assault landings or something. We'll
You're also talking to. I was going to say you're also talking to the guy who's made a 17th SS mechanized reconnaissance force that has 10 swim dragons in it.
Yeah, that's true. I did see that list, and you did saw what I wrote in response to that list, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. You printed it out, and put it in the bin, and burnt it beyond all recognition.
Yes, I was impressed, and yet immediately no. It was quite a fun looking list. So from Russ's point of view, for things that he'd like to avoid, he starts with the ironic but classic comment of cheese is always a little bit on the nose. There's nothing really that he thinks here as a community. He doesn't think there's nothing immediately that we need to take away that's causing any big challenges for us. He thinks that we have a lot of options available to the community right now for events. We definitely try to keep them varied, and the other TOs, we're all comfortable that we have different approaches and that we talk with each other and try and make sure feedback does get circulated. He's recently enjoyed, however, some of the casual random mission days, which were a lot more laid back, and would potentially like to see more of them. Then he's written also, it's like it'd be good to see Daniel actually get to play more events. Yes, that's a standard thing. It'll happen when it happens. Nic's point of view, Nic actually had, again, very much along that theme line. He would suggest that if we started bringing more time period restricted events, such as potentially a strict early war only setup, because he's a US player, the US player during early war has very limited options in how they can build their armies if you're using theater selectors, and so that's something to be aware of. It's not necessarily something to stop doing, but it's certainly something to be aware of when we're planning out those things, and make sure that we have other avenues. And from my point of view, if other avenues could be, perhaps we have loner armies available on the day for people that don't have US or have US and can't play early war or something like that, which we're maybe closer to achieving some of those sorts of things as well. And then largely things that are geared towards competitive play, and allowing multiple sets of multiple launches while game time is actually limited, or having massive dice count armies whilst having limited time, and so you end up in a position where you can't progress the game far enough to actually get a determinable result. You will end up with a result by default of the number of units involved. So if you have two 18 dice lists fight each other, that can actually turn into, you get to the end of maybe turn 4 after some hard fighting on a good board with good lists, and you're like, we actually can't really it'll be a draw, but neither of us feel satisfied with where that game actually went. And that's a fair point too, something for us to pick up and work with. So then so question number 6, have you experienced concepts and ideas from other areas which you would like to explore within Bolt Action? So this is talking about things like actual research, TO&E charts, particular scenarios or stories that have been read or passed around as things to be done. And so this is a bit more open. So Bob, what did you have as a response to concepts or ideas from other areas or potentially systems?
Hang on. Have I written the thing? Yeah. So, I really didn't. I said if I had the space to access all factions, I'd love to do some sort of campaign where you basically recreating different theatres of the war and see if you can get a different result, and almost RPG it, where you get benefits from being victorious and stuff. And I know there's Lord of the Rings kind of has one with their version, and there's different ones around. The only problem is I don't have the bandwidth to create something like that, and I don't think I'm all the talent. I'm not good at. I'm okay at reading, semi-reading rules and playing games, but I'm not good at creating stuff. So, but being able to have right, this is the access, and you play a range of games over a period of time, but that always becomes difficult because people drop in and out and time restraints and stuff. That would be something I'd really enjoy with. As far as getting technical and stuff, I just enjoy how the game is set. I'm not really looking at having proper army setups and what they would have been in real life and that, because I think all of a sudden you're not going to be there's going to be people that are just out it's not even, and I don't have the forces. I've only got a limited amount of models, so for me just a campaign-y type thing I think I'd enjoy, but finding the people to play with, especially in Albany, we're all sort of quite a small community, so that has become difficult. But yeah, that was my thoughts on that particular one.
So certainly the idea of campaigns has come up several times across through different events. So I'll have to put some more thought into how we can get that off the ground effectively in the wider footprint of WA.
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah. Obviously, I've always had a interest in military history, like Sean was saying, personally and family. But now that I've focused on Bolt Action, I find myself doing a lot more reading and video watching about World War II and looking more in depth into camo patterns and vehicle markings and unit compositions and all that stuff for painting and list building. Much more than I have before. I'm trying to get all that correct. It's World War II's a big topic, so there's always something new to learn. So just enjoying deep diving into that, and whether that translate. I don't know if it's going to translate into gameplay, but just definitely translating into enjoyment of the hobby.
Good. One would probably argue that it has achieved its goal. Then, if you're enjoying the hobby, in my book, that's typically point number one. What about yourself, Sean?
This question made me go back to essentially my first army when I started in first, bolt action version 1, which was my ranger list. I immediately wanted to find out all I could because I didn't know anything about rangers, and I found out all the different types of rangers that there were. I mean, they were all volunteers, and the different ranger regiments and where they were, and when I chose the ranger unit division that I wanted to basically go with, I also didn't get pedantic, but I wanted to sort of stay in theme. So when I read a lot of their stories, the guys in Europe, the rangers really didn't sort of, for example, operate with armor very often. So I don't have any Sherman tanks in any of my lists at all. I think the heaviest vehicle I could find that the Rangers actually operated with in conjunction in Europe were the Greyhounds, and later in war when Shaffies came along. So the only tank that I have that I'll field with my Rangers will be a Shaffy.
A good tank.
That's about yeah. So I've got books on Rangers, and I look at the organisations, the TO&E charts, and I won't go into trying to match it exactly, but I'll try and at least try and keep it in the realms of possibility of what they would have had.
Yep, I can absolutely understand that. It's very similar to how I set my original Soviet force up. And just, I was like, I know nothing about their structure or what they were doing, and I'm going to use some unreliable sources on the internet to inform me. I probably should have got a book, but so then Russ took my question probably at its broadest aspect. So he said, are there concepts and ideas and issues from other areas that he'd like to explore? He's like, yeah, but it's so hard to cover all of World War II. Like, it's that when you're looking at trying to bring stuff into the war game for him, it's like World War II is just huge. Like, the actual reality of what was covered, where areas and places it was fought, the different things that were used, like, was massive. He would love to do things like lesser known battles, like the Obo landings, 1945, Balikpapan Dun. I might be mispronouncing. Oh, sorry. Doing lesser known battles like the Obo landings in 1945, Balikpapan. I might even tackle this one myself in the future. Jackson did such a great job with his Budapest event that he unfortunately sets a high standard for everyone. And so, yeah, there are lots of things that he would love to see, and people like Andy Lawson at Outpost, like, seeing how creative his boards can be, and that's inspiring him to want to do something all of a sudden in, like, trying to build a nice inspired board to actually suit the battles he wants to do. So Russ definitely has a broad perspective on the things that he'd like to engage in that space, but the lesser known battles is probably one that we can look to do some accommodating for. And then Nick actually went from a rules mechanic point of view and said he'd actually love to see the suppression mechanic from Star Wars Legion, where at the end of the turn you remove a point of suppression, or in this case a pin, from each unit unless you're inexperienced, because there's got to be a penalty somewhere. Same for the officers. He's always said that the officers have struggled with utility. So the officers themselves, yes, okay, they're mandatory and they have their morale and they've got their snap too, but you only ever take up to maybe a first lieutenant unless you're really pushing the theme in hard. Like, there's no real reason to ever consider a major or a captain in normal circumstances. So he's like, you could say that if an officer is taking a rally order, that you're able to remove excess pins, not just the one, and you like some sort of morale effect that actually affects units around him, not just himself as an individual. And so building that in, which he's seen in apparently another game where your command teams actually have a much more real impact on keeping your units in the fight, which I thought was a very interesting idea, as especially because pins can be so pivotal in the game. A way to have a higher command team actually interact with those in a very serious way would be quite interesting.
Yeah, Legion has a thing. You've got a morale level, and if you surpass it, you lose one of your actions, etc. But if you're within a certain distance of the leader, you get to use their morale value, which is generally higher. So in this case, say you take one pin off at the end. If you're within 6 inches of your leader, who's a first lieutenant, you get to take 2 pins off. Or if you're within 12 inches of a captain or whatever, so you could extend it out, and that would be something along those lines, where then your leader has a reason actually to be up and amongst them. That would be something I could see. I think that's what he's trying to get at with that. That would actually work quite well. Give them, like you said, an extra utility rather than just being
attacks, right?
The thing you forget to always do.
Yeah.
Look. You always forget to do the extra order. I can't remember what the actual term is, but
snap 2.
where you can the snap 2. You always forget the snap 2, but it actually would be really useful sometimes. After a game, I go, that would have been great if I could have gone with those 2 things. But but just the pin, getting rid of pins would be. Never thought of that mechanic from Legion.
When I read his response, I was like, if that's I need to read up again on Legion, because what he's written out, I was like, that's actually a very interesting way. We might have to try it for an event and see if we can get some captains and majors on the board. we like messing with things like that. So then the $1 million question, which we always typically it's asked around the world in bolt action spheres, and you have the ability to change one thing in bolt action. What's it going to be? Do you want to start us off, Bob?
Yeah, I went down the rules line because most of the things that I play with are pretty good. And mine's just the embarking rules. So I use transports a fair bit to get my guys around. The first army I ever brought to a tournament was just I had no vehicles. I hadn't printed any, I hadn't bought any. And just getting across the board was a pain. So vehicles came in. So the embarking rules of where you have to, when you get in a vehicle, back into a vehicle, it can't move that turn, I feel is really... I think one of them were dumb because you can drive up and hop out of a vehicle, but you can't hop in a vehicle and drive off. I think it's just counterintuitive. Most of the rules I understand, and you go, yep, that makes sense. Like, yeah, flamethrower can destroy a tank. My brother-in-law hates that rule. He thinks that's a dumb rule, but I just think if you're standing next to a vehicle that you just got out of, you should be able to hop back into it. Maybe you can only do an advance, you can't do a run or whatever, or you can't jump back out again at the end of their movement. I'd be okay with that. Like, you can either go in or out. You can't do both in the same action, in the same turn. I think that's fine. Not that you could anyway, but just that's my bugbear. And I always feel I do it wrong. Occasionally I just jump in and I drive off, and we both forget, and after the game I go, I actually cheated inadvertently. So that would be the rule that I would change.
Yeah, that is always one that it makes your transports a one-way delivery system, essentially, and it's something which at artillery is even worse. You don't even bother towing the artillery for the most part if you can do anything to avoid doing that, because you just lose turns worth of shots. I understand the unlimbering component, and that makes sense, but the fact that you lose 3 turns if you want to attach it back and then drive it and then get it off again, it's like, that's just never going to happen. That's a very good place to start. Adam, what do you think?
Mine's probably a little bit broader. Mine was a well set out, clear and concise rule book. Because I haven't had a background in other war games, so I'm coming in cold. I'm getting old. I've got a full-time job. I've got a bad memory at the best of times. So absorbing all that info is hard enough without it being convoluted and contradictory and ambiguous.
And just
so
mixed around the place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Things in the wrong spot.
trying to jump around. I've actually even, I don't know how far I get with it, but started like rewriting it out in my own words to like try to make more sense of it and help absorb it a bit better. But yeah, so
there is,
I mean, hopefully
a community-made index. Have you got a copy of that?
Yeah.
That helps a little bit.
But then I find like I've just got like a pile of sheets at tournaments and flicking through different sheets of paper trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah. That is. I put it in one of my responses to the questions when I thought I was still going to give them, and I was like, someone else made a comment in this question, so I didn't have to. We'll get to that. Sean.
My one thing has mostly been fixed over the years. It's access to the miniatures that I want to get hold of. So, I play mechanized reconnaissance Germans, and it was often hard to get hold of like a 234/3 light, the recce armored car with a light howitzer in it, or I wanted particular models, and because we're waiting on Warlord or someone to put out a model, I wouldn't have it. So I'd have to make something other than what I wanted. But mostly because I've been playing for so many years, I've managed to collect the bits and pieces from here and there and wherever I could find them. That was the one thing that I suppose bugged me early on when I started playing bolt action.
And it's a very because they came in that they didn't come in, for example, at like 1/72nd scale. They came in at the heroic proportion scale for 28mm, which the line of vehicles that they needed to create that simply didn't exist in 156 was quite a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and certainly I would say the affordable range, because you could go out and find custom stuff all over the place, but it was like die-cast models, and they're not cheap, and they're very heavy. It's interesting. So Russ said, from his point of view, Cat just knocked a dice off the table. Russ's point of view, he thinks that the easy thing would be changing or reviving a light commando raid style of game within the official rules. So actually creating a smaller scale starter for bolt action, so firefight is typically what would be referenced as that space right now, but actually turning that into a game system as an alternative way to get started. So instead of buying an entire platoon, you may only buy a section, and they change, offer section boxes rather than platoon boxes to accommodate that, which was interesting. But it's driven from the point of view that Russ always likes meeting new people and getting them involved in the hobby. So the reality is, if we make things too challenging to get involved up front, some people won't want to engage, or they might be coming from skirmish games and they go, wait, it's an army game, and they look and they go, that's like 100 times more miniatures than what I have right now. And when you're on the outside, and potentially, Adam, your viewpoint is the most relevant to this, when you're coming into wargaming and you don't have a history of understanding how it works, it can be quite, I expect, daunting when we all get started. That it's like, this is a lot, like this is, and we look at it as existing wargamers and go, it's not that much, like it's actually much better than other systems, and just like, no, you don't, this is a lot. And so I think that's
Exactly.
It's a very interesting point.
Nearly a year to collect and build and paint an army for the first tournament, then you get there and realize that probably all wrong. So then you got to like start tinkering around the edges of what you've got. You're not going to start a whole fresh army from scratch again. So
that's right.
So yeah, like you're saying, it would be nice to sort of be able to build up a bit slower.
Yeah, and building up, I guess, in more bite-sized chunks as opposed to, what's my smallest box? Well, I mean, technically there are model boxes available, but if we're looking at new starters, they're typically going to buy a 30-man box to get their core established and ready to go. So an interesting idea. Nick nailed this one on the head, which is where I went to a degree, and so his thing that he would change, he says, with all respect, the designer editing team, I love the core concept and mechanics of the game. However, we're in a situation where the game has started to show signs of becoming bogged down with writers in theatre books, essentially while focusing on what their passion is, and they're doing their research and they're writing in units and different types in those theatre books. They're not necessarily thinking of what that's doing to the overall macro space of the system. So they're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but some of those things have happened. So when I think about rules for fortifications, rules for how you do night fighting, all these extra things that aren't normally part of a game, there are several ways to play those, which is why we typically don't immediately bring them into events. There's just a couple of tight, like, some things you get fortifications, sometimes you have to pay points for fortifications, sometimes you have to do certain things on weather, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you have theatre selectors with rules that are applicable for that and then have no value outside of the scenario. Nick's concern there is that the more of that happens, and where every unit or regiment starts getting a special rule, it moves more towards what 40k was in originally, where you've got lots of just it's typically known as rules bloat, where like everything has a special rule that if you want to play, and certainly like in Bob's case, if you want to play competitively, you now have to go and relearn every single army and each unit in that army as to what they do. That's not what Bolt Action's strength was. Bolt Action's strength was the fact that it was simple and fun to play. And so too much of that campaign stuff being added can create a problem. And then he says, and in case blue, Italians going from a fluffy choice that only dedicated players wanted to play because it was challenging and fun, to suddenly being hyper competitive because a cavalry unit can charge twice. And that's just, I was like, you got three things in there, but I'll let them pass. So again, moving on to, and I'll just take this moment to do a checkpoint. Is everyone still comfortable? Okay. Anyone need a toilet break?
I'm good. My wife just bought me a drink.
Nice.
No, I'm going all right.
Should be okay for now.
Perfect. All right, we will continue. So moving on to some of the broader perspectives, what is one thing that you believe that you gain benefit from by engaging in the hobby? What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, look, mine's I work in education, so this is sort of a bit buzzwordy, but I've got mindfulness and community. So when I first started, when I moved out of X-Wing and bought a Legion army, I bought Lord of the Rings in 2001 when it came out because I love Lord of the Rings, and I tried painting from the Games Workshop books. There was no such thing as the internet. I had no idea what I was doing and no one to play, so I just carted around this sort of half-painted, very poorly grey plastic stuff, and I bought a new army, and I bought into Legion, and it had painting, and I was like, the painting always killed me, but I found that to be really quite relaxing. It's like a meditation, just sitting down, painting a unit. Although I did try to paint yellow as one of my first colours, and almost gave up immediately because we all know yellow is a terrible colour to paint. But going on from that, then just list building and wish listing what I want to get. And if I'm having trouble trying to go to sleep, I'll just start building lists in my head, and I drift off. It's like a meditation, that sort of thing. And then community, so playing games, common interests. Like they say, men don't talk to each other face to face. They talk shoulder to shoulder, but we play across the game from someone, and you end up having chats, and you learn about them, and it's over a common thing. And with this being World War II, and you see people's passions and where they're from. So I think for us as guys, it's a mainly male hobby. Let's be honest. There's not a lot of females that turn up to events, and when they do, it's great. But it's mainly a guy thing, and it's really good that we get to that kind of community. And it's been really hard down in Albany. We lost our store, and all my other games have pretty much died. The only games that are surviving is 40k, because that's the thing that will survive the Holocaust, and bolt action, because John down here does an amazing job and keeps everyone together, and we've got a couple other guys that are coming in and trying to start up a few things as well. And it's the community and the mindfulness, I think, are the two real things that I've got out of wargaming as a hobby, and bolt action itself as well.
Great answer.
Sorry, that was a bit long.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's very similar to that, actually. Basically, one thing is mental health, because I was in the market for a new hobby after sports injuries meant I couldn't run around anymore. So it just gives me something to think about besides work and work around the house and real life. And so you get to come home and you do some painting to unwind, and researching the history and lists, and building lists and that, just to focus on something other than, like I said, all the problems in the world. So you get to listen to podcasts and watch videos, the regular club games to break up the working week, and occasional events to mix with the community. Very similar to what Bob was saying, but yeah, that's definitely that for me as well.
Also another good answer, Sean.
It's got to be the people. There's nothing else besides the people that draw me to want to keep coming back to these games, because it's all about you and the other guy on the other side of the table, rolling a few dice and having some laughs. As I've gotten older, your friends that you might have had when you're growing up or going through school or university or wherever you happen to be might tend to drift away. So I've found that the active circle of friends as I've gotten older has gotten smaller. So as both Bob and Adam have alluded to, it's great for mental health, and it's great for meeting new people and community wise.
Yep. For the record, I agree with all three of you, and actually both Russ and Nick have outlined similar comments. This was the one question where everyone I expected to be unanimously aligned, and yeah, Russ has said the same thing. He's got mad friends that have become complete total mates outside of the hobby, and they've been in the hobby side, even though they haven't always been either working together or at school together or whatever. They have been friends doing stuff with the hobby over 2 decades. It's a long time, and we actually spend a lot of time at events, rubbing shoulders with people, trying to, and we're all here to have fun, and just as you've all said, just this is about having fun and just relaxing and just enjoying. Some of us will play really hard, some of us will play for theme and enjoy, or a mix of both. It's all okay. It actually doesn't matter. Come and enjoy. That's something which is very interesting to see, the cross section, that most people are actually all in it for not the right reasons, but certainly a similar reason. This was question 9 was a bit of a trick question. Painting hobby aids and improved game performance, are they linked? So Bob, what did you make of this one?
I said no. I think how you prepare your armies, that's a completely different skill. I know people who are awesome painters who they don't even play games; they just love painting and hobbying. Really, it's your practice, your strategy, your list knowledge are going to improve your game performance, not I put not how pretty your bases are, because I'm terrible at basing, so that's why I'm jealous. But it's more and who you play against. So, we're in Albany. I think we've got 10, 12 people maybe that have models and play to varying degrees. And I play down here. I'm probably top 4 out of those people. And I come to Perth and I'm always mid-range. And then I'm sure if we went across to New South Wales or Victoria, where they've got a bigger community, we would, our top players would be mid-range there. And then if we go to the UK, where the community's even bigger, I would be bottom half, and that's okay because steel sharpens steel, right? So the better people you play, the more you play, the bigger your community is, the better your best players are. That is just in all games that I've played. That is pretty much it. The people who put the time and effort into actual design practice, they get better at the game. Game performance is a different skill altogether to modelling and then hobbying. And I wish I was a good painter, but I just don't have the patience, and I've got too many games. And I'm a 3-foot painter. If it looks good from 3 feet, it's fine. I think you would have seen my armies. They're always painted, but you get up close enough, they're not very good. But you put them on a table with some nice terrain, they fit in there. It's all good. So I don't think paint has anything to do with it, really, personally.
What do you think, Adam?
Well, I might have to change my answer after that. Bob's just convinced me that I'm wrong. But basically agreeing that I don't think they're necessarily directly linked. I was going to say that I'm guessing that the sort of person that puts time and effort into other parts of the hobby probably puts effort into becoming a better player as well. Yeah, that's the main thing. I've got other points that actually veer wildly off topic, but that's probably the direct answer to the question.
I do think that is a good point, that if someone enjoys putting the effort into the painting and the modelling, they are possibly more likely to put effort into playing the game well. Sean?
I agree with everything that's been said by the guys beforehand. With one light-hearted sort of maybe addition, there's always the new model curse.
Yeah.
You put a nicely new painted tank on the table. You've never played with it before. It's going to perform badly. You put you put a squad of infantry down that you've just finished painted. They're gonna die.
And this was really the trick question part of it, because everybody thinks, no, they're not related. It's like, wait, did you only paint them yesterday? And then it's like, they are not going to perform. Yeah, I'm a staunch believer in painted miniatures perform better. But that's because my normal performance is abysmal, and so I can get away with saying that because on the odd occasion they'll do well, but just generally not the brand new unit. And in fact, certainly in game groups that I've been part of in the past, we deliberately would snipe the newly painted stuff to keep that curse in play.
This is just confirmation bias, really, isn't it? It's you notice it dies. You notice it dies because you love it so much because you've just done it, and the guy doesn't die any more than others.
And the funny part is, it actually doesn't matter what they would have... Like, they could have killed 3 or 4 units before dying. It won't matter. They're useless because they died and they were just painted.
Oh no, I get it. So I don't paint anything.
Maybe that's why my stuff performs so poorly, is I spend too much time painting it.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. A lovely painted army. I love looking at everyone's models and seeing the amazing work people do. I still think people who bring display boards are cheating when they go for best army, but that's a different story. But a lovely painted army, playing against it is just it's a joy. It increases the game experience. Playing against, there's a couple of guys down here who just don't paint, so you play against grey plastic, lots of other games, and it takes you out of the immersion and the enjoyment of the game. So, like I said, I would love to be a better painter. Because I just love playing against well-painted armies. I'll go out of my way to play people with well-painted armies because it just makes the game so much more enjoyable and a lovely table. And you all know that just enhances it. So yeah, it doesn't make game performance, but the actual game experience is increased with better hobby and painting.
Yep, that's where we're lucky here. There is a good standard of painting in across that I've seen. It's like it's very, you're trying to vote for best painted and you're like, they're all good, how do you pick? So,
and tables as well. The tables we get to play on are awesome, especially even at the tournaments where you've got, up into, I think there was like 10 tables or 12 tables, and they're all nice. There's no, look, we've got some cardboard cutout stuff here because we ran out of stuff, or we've had to limit how much terrain we've got. You've just got our tables. I think we get to play, and I think we're actually quite spoiled in our communities. They're just lovely tables. People have put some time, money, and effort into making the experience for us all amazing. That's off topic, but that's part of it. I think
it is a relatively. It's still attached to that question, and you're right. The only reason that I get to run events with such amazing terrain is because it's coming from the community. It's not my stuff. If it was my stuff, it would be the cardboard boxes that I still have from when we first started. But yeah, I can never say thank you enough to the community who have created that opportunity atmosphere for us to come play games in. It's amazing every time. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So what about things like, so we've talked a lot about what I would call vanilla bolt action with its campaign books, that's all related to World War II. The next question 10, talks about supplement periods, which typically be it fan-made like VC on the Trail for Vietnam, or the Korea supplement, or even other community mods like there's a Star Wars bolt action community mod where it's basically there's profiles they've created for all the Star Wars minis and they just play bolt action but in the Star Wars universe. Is there any interest in that sort of thing, Bob?
Well, I didn't actually know there was a Star Wars mod until I read the question this afternoon, and so now I'm going to have to research it because I do like Star Wars and I've got lots of Star Wars minis. But my thing really is it all sounds great, but I have, like all of us, a limited minis budget, and I'm already spread too thin. So to go into Vietnam or Korea, the thing about bolt action that I managed to sell was that we've pretty much got an army in a box. I've got a 3D printer so I can print some vehicles if I need them, and I buy the dudes because I do still like to support the company that makes the game, but for me it's just I've got too many games. So it sounds great, and of course I'd probably play it because I just have a problem, but I think I'm better off not trying things out because it generally means I'll end up buying more things that I don't necessarily need. So yes, not at the moment.
Speaking right to my heart there, Bob. What about you, Adam?
Currently not really, mainly because I'm still wrapping my head around the basic rules, so I haven't got to that point of looking to add spice. And obviously similar to Bob is, the budget precludes all that anyway. But having said that, John Beeson down in Albany was talking about his Falklands campaign. I got a bit excited because obviously that was happening when I was a kid, so I sort of got some interest in that area. So if he ever runs an event around that, that's I don't mind that sort of stuff. Forking out for whole new armies, and that's probably a bit unrealistic at this stage.
And Sean?
I'm probably diametrically opposed to these guys in terms of my budget that's available to me. I could buy into Korean and Vietnam and Star Wars if I wanted to, if there was, but I have almost zero interest in them. mainly because, and I'm a massive Star Wars fan as well. I'm like Bob. I started playing X-Wing when first version came out as well. I still have all my X-Wing models from all three factions, and I've got even like the epic size ships and stuff. But I just don't have any interest in playing Star Wars bolt action. I suppose this, I've read all my Star Wars books. I know my Star Wars stories, and I can't throw my narrative into that universe. So, me personally, and in terms of Korea and Vietnam, those were two conflicts that my family didn't have any personal direct involvement in. My father was a national serviceman during Vietnam, but he didn't actually end up getting deployed because of medical condition that he had here in Australia. So he ended up serving as a NCO that trained guys that sent them off to war. So he served during Vietnam, but he only served as a trainer here in Australia. So I've got no family stories that can link into a narrative that I might want to build an army around. If that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes quite a lot of sense. And I think because certainly, I guess one of the things that draws me to bolt action is well, typically my family history has been on the Navy side, but the whole interest in military history because of my family and what they've done has always been one of the drivers. And so I completely understand that if the connection isn't strong enough, that the interest is just not the same. And certainly from a Star Wars bolt action, that was a lot more prominent before Legion. When Star Wars Legion came out, that probably was something where a lot of people would have swapped around. I believe the mod is still available. I'll see if I can find it for you, Bob, in my files.
Okay.
And then
I guess we're talking about small communities as well, like the community in the Albany as well. So finding people to play with would be difficult.
Is the next part. It's always the next part. Russ is a big fan of the Vietnam period. So he's played not just VC on the Trail from a bolt action point of view, but also several other types of game systems. And he says at the time, Warlord was going to let him know that they were considering doing a Korea War, and when they actually did that campaign book, to see if he was interested, because he'd posted up, go, hey, if you ever do it, let me know. I'm interested in trying to help do play testing or something. There's a few things that he says might be on the way from other companies in that space, but yeah, that's still a wait and see. Nick McDonald was pretty straightforward with his response. So he's like, nah, the other periods or supplements don't really have an interest for me. I like bolt action as it is for bolt action. I get the detail and the supplements of what I need in the existing World War II scope. There's enough there for him to pick it up. It doesn't need to go beyond, which I completely agree with. So the next one starts to think a little bit more around question 11, how would you consider introducing new players or friends into the hobby, and not just bolt action, but actually hobby in general? So, have you got things that you know would work? Bob, what do you think?
I don't really have much on to get people in, but I always found with especially if there's a shop or whatever and you're playing and people come up and want to have games, or the test game with people, and I'm sure you've spoken about it before with new players and stuff, but I always find with all things, people just want to roll dice and they want to see things die and they want to feel like they're involved. So I find it's more when someone's already shown an interest, to when you play the first couple of games with them, you spread your, make sure you put your guys out where you wouldn't normally put them, make sure that there's targets for people to hit. You roll some dice, and if you take a few people off one unit, don't shoot that unit again, shoot somebody else. don't pin someone out, spread your shots, and just swallow your ego, shelve your ego, basically, of I probably should lose this game. I think I played a practice match a new player the other day, a few weeks ago, and I brought a whole lot of one-shot weapons because they generally fail, right? So then I roll a 6 on my first mortar, and then I roll a 6 on my second mortar, and then, and I'm just like, oh, this is not supposed to be happening. I'm supposed to be failing these rolls because I'm just trying to spread things around and let them shoot stuff, but it's just about making them feel part of the game and bringing things to show them how things work, not necessarily things that are all going to work together. Right, I'll bring a one-shot weapon here and something there. That's my thing with new players. Down here, I don't have an extended friend group that I would try and get in. People that I know at work wouldn't really be interested. It's not their bag. I'm a phys ed teacher, so I work with a whole lot of people who are recovering jocks. So they're not really into playing nerd type games, I suppose, is one for a better term. I don't really. Everyone knows I play, so if they're ever interested, they can hit me up. But I don't really go out of my way to try and ask people if they want to, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer personally.
Can I just butt in for a sec? I was going to say, Bob, I'm an ex-teacher. I would hit up some of your society environment teachers. You're bound to find someone who's got an interest in World War II.
My wife's she's head of HAS at the other high school, and there's no one there. She's not even interested. I keep saying, I think you'd enjoy it. She's like, no, she doesn't like to play games with me. There was one guy I thought I might get, but he plays like the sort of the more board game ones, like Memoir 44 and those games.
Oh yeah.
So he's sort of got his own sort of way of being involved. Now my plan is to try and start a after school club with some of our disenfranchised kids, and I've got enough range of games that I can possibly get them into different stuff. So that's what my thinking is.
We successfully did that for a while up here at Warwick Senior High School.
Oh yeah.
Had a few young kids come along and have a look at that, and it was not just bolt action, it was things like playing card games and stuff like that as well. So kids got into playing Magic the Gathering and saw some miniature games getting played and stuff. So it's good good way of getting the next generation, not necessarily playing immediately, but getting involved.
Indoctrinate them when they're young.
That's my focus is my 7 and my 2-year-old. So my 7-year-old's pretty much, he plays with all my minis to every game. So, Hulk's fighting some elves while Sherman tanks rolling in the background of so I let them play with my minis. They all get broken and they're all a bit bashed up, but eventually he'll be coming to Perth for the tournaments, hopefully, because then it'll be a family trip. So that's an easier sell at home if it's not just me going away for the weekend. So when you mentioned the guy said he'd been playing since he was 5, I think Archer had his first modified game of Legion when he was 3.5, 4. Ooh. So he's already played some Blood Bowl. We've already played a game of Legion. We've already played some bolt action, and he tells me he makes up games of like, I've got a mate coming over, I've written a list. He told me tonight dinner, I've got a list with 75 rifles in it. He's just making it up, but he's thinking about it. So to me, that's where it's at. Right. Just slowly drip feed it, make it fun, make it enjoyable. He's painted some models and just make it, it's not, you can't touch that stuff. It's like, if you break something, tell me, we can fix it. Yep. So that's just a personal with kids. As far as people outside goes, I'm always up for a game with people, but it's just, it's the cost, and especially now there's no store. It's not like they can just walk in and buy something off the shelf. They'd have to go online, order it. I've heard Tactics has moved, so it's safer to send people there now to look for stuff without feeling like they're going to die with something falling on them. Yep.
The store's actually quite good now.
Yeah, the new store.
Yeah. So I haven't been to Perth since that happened. So that's another side of just being able to get hold of the game. Yeah. Is quite difficult. It's a barrier for entry.
I was just going to say, frankly, Mike should have moved his store 20 years ago.
Yeah, but like it's surprising he's still open. There's been so many in Perth that have just don't last. So it's just more that barrier to getting people stuff. And I don't have enough. I have enough now. I've got 2 armies, but they're both British. And what you really want when you demo is a British versus German. If you're going to do a World War II game, that sells it to people pretty much instantly, right? If you bring in, the Finns versus, the Greeks, I don't think that sells it to people. It's you've got to have the traditional rivals, and people go, oh, I get that. There's a Sherman, there's a Tiger. Let's do it. This looks great. That's what sells it. So,
and that's a very good point.
It's more about being available.
Yeah, because if you think most people who are, or I shouldn't say most people, but certainly a lot of the younger generation growing up now, they will learn about World War II based on movies and based on TikTok reels and based on all this other stuff that they're being exposed to right now. They're not learning in the way that I did potentially, which was actually like a dedicated 2-week case study in school where we actually went through the whole history. And so, making it relatable, if you take those obscure minor nations, yes, they absolutely played their part in the war, but if you take those as the forces, they won't be able to relate to that at all. It's not going to be something that just they understand, certainly not from an Australian point of view. What about you, Adam? Now, this is oh wait, no, we've already done this question. No, we're up to Adam. Sorry.
It's, Yep, up to Adam. Sorry, I took off on the piss.
I'm not sure I'm in a position to comment too much on that. I just know that I have a friend, Andrew, who I actually went halves with the Band of Brothers box set originally with, but he's just happy to paint. He doesn't seem to really have any interest in playing. So we get together regularly and have painting sessions. And my sons have dabbled in 40k, but don't seem to be interested in bolt action just yet. Maybe they'll hit a certain age and it'll kick in, hopefully. But yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think that if we just keep doing events, these videos and podcasts and social media, and the people who are ready find it. And I guess, if you're like we're saying, if you're available to demo games or introductory games or whatever, or like myself, just rocking up to an event and walking around and having a chat with people and seeing it in action. So if it's there, when people are ready, they'll find it. I think, you can't really force somebody to do it, so you just have to wait for them to find you. So you just have to be ready for them when they get there.
Yep, that's very, very true. What about yourself, Sean?
In terms of finding players to engage with bolt action, I tend to try and, I suppose, harvest from my old, long-time crew of gamers that have played all the various board games, tabletop war games over the years. And it's sort of paid off in the last year and a bit, because we've got a new player that's coming to a lot of the tournaments now, a fellow by the name of Rowan. He's an old mate of mine, and the way he got into bolt action was that there's a group of gaming mates that we every New Year, around about the 2nd or the 3rd of January every year, we would get together and have a big, massive game of whatever we felt like of that year. Some years it was 40k, and we might not have played a game since the last January 2nd or 3rd. And last couple of years, we've thought, let's try this bolt action game. And so there's normally about 7 or 8 of us playing, and it's a whole day thing where we stop and have a barbecue, and it's just doesn't matter how long it's going to take. It's just getting together old university friends. And Rowan really liked the game, and I said, well, you should come along and have a look at some of the tournaments that I play in once in a while. And he's come along and he's just watched. It happened to be nice and handy because he lives in South Perth, right near Outpost. And he saw me playing a tournament or two, and then he said, that's it, I'm playing. And next thing I know, he rocks up with like 3 huge boxes of Russians. I don't know whether you've seen Rowan rock up with his stuff, Daniel.
I played him at the last event, and so I'd seen Rowan around and visiting a couple of times, and I could tell that he was interested enough to want to spectate, but didn't necessarily have time at events to do anything else. And I was like, that's fine. I'm obviously not able to press you anyway. I've got to make sure that the hooligans behind me stay in order. But he was telling me about this massive event that you guys did essentially once a year, and you've just started doing bolt action ones, and it was like all day. And I'm like, that's my dream. I can't wait to do that. Like, because normally I have to cram it into a tight space of timing and everything.
We normally pick it like the second or third day of January, because normally some people still got like extended holidays for that period of time.
Yep.
And it's not New Year's Day, so it's we'll get together and we have a big huge board, and we'll just, someone will rock up with salad and someone will rock up with barbecue, and we'll stop for like an hour and a half at lunch, and then we'll get back into it. And the wives and the kids are sometimes there running around and doing whatever they like, and they just ignore us and get on with it.
The good fun of and that's certainly what I grew up on, as those are game days proper, where it's like you don't have to worry about doing multiple necessarily games all at once, but it's like you can set up a really fun mission and just be like, nah, we're just going to go ham for it all day. Excellent.
So Rowan and I have got a group of about maybe 5 or 6 other guys that we're going to try and get into a little bit more regular, but it comes down to whether I've got time.
Of course.
Yeah.
I do notice that certainly with bolt action, I've played lots of different systems in my tenure of being a wargamer. Bolt action has the most interesting demographic of being it consistently spread across a wide number. We've got people that are coming out of uni, we've got people that are midlife like myself or just after, we've got people that are older, we've got people like my dad who's like, he's trying to set himself up to go, right, what does retirement look like? He's pushing into that space. He's like, I just want to relax and play toy soldiers with the grandkids of my son. And but it's like there's consistently a spread of people in that space. It's not sort of some of the other war games. It's very, very obvious that it's early entry uni students or young adults, or quite the opposite. Certainly other Napoleonics. It's moving much more towards a lot of the older demographic. But a very interesting.
I think is it because of for want of a better word, it's the lore that surrounds us. Like 40k has its own lore, Star Wars has its own lore, and World War II is such a big part of. We all do it. You always cover it at school. Everyone knows about it. There's movies. Everyone knows about it, but because it covers such a wide timeline, like we've been learning about it since it stopped, but it's never fallen out of favor. We haven't really. That's why I think you get such a demographic, and people have connections. Like you all have direct connections to World War II. You can trace family. You can there's that thing. That's why we get such a good range and such different reasons why people play. I play it. I like history, but I also like competitive. But then I've heard people talking, and there's obviously guys, and they just focusing on one certain unit, and they know about this 3 dudes in this unit, and they know their whole life story, and they love playing that unit. There's that such a wide range of why people play, which I think also gives everyone someone to connect with, which I then think is why you get such a big demographic, which is, like you said, it's quite amazing, the wide demographic you get.
So in terms of the question, introducing new players, Russ has said he previously stated things like this podcast, but also just podcasts in general, engaging in social media where young people are starting to that's a primary engagement source for them in certain spaces. So having some coverage rather than nothing is a great way to start getting people interested, or getting the scenarios talked about, trying to talk about the actual history. But also bolt action is one of the cheapest systems and generally quite accessible. Now, admittedly, accessibility does very much depend on where you live and how you can get it and where that all sits. but it stands to reason that bolt action, whilst it's still not super cheap, it's much cheaper than certain other war games for what you get. So that's a very interesting point, that that you could still potentially use a financial driver, especially if you split a starter set. Nick has said that he would always consider doing a demo game as well, and generally would start small scale on a small board. The intent is to get them to understand the mechanics, and then have a slow grow league or a league ladder, or just a set of casual game days where you get that person to actually understand the flow of the game, and basically avoid throwing them in front of one of our more competitive events and a bunch of veterans, and avoid that situation of deer in the headlights, not really sure how the game really operates, and then you end up with the typical result if that's happened. If the veteran player and I would put myself in that category. It's like, if I'm choosing, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm playing hard today, just rolling the dice. But I think the demos, to get them in, the visibility, we previously had a stand at the last 2 years at WASMEX, the West Australian Scale Model Exhibition. So we'll have a connection there that we typically have in things going. There's talk about me running a convention next year, which I need to get more organised about, to put that on and actually have a bunch of demos and things available. Bolt action is obviously going to be one of those. Number 12, this one should be quite straightforward, I suspect. International travel for games and playing in external tournaments, either nationally or internationally, plausible for you, yes or no? Bob?
Yes, but no. At the moment, with a 2-year-old, time-wise probably not, but my wife's from the UK, so we just went back in term 3, and I took some Lord of the Rings and MCP, and I played in a few tournaments over there, and I'm assuming bolt action would be the same. If I turned up there with an army, I'd be able to get onto Facebook and find some communities, and they'd all be welcoming, and that's the great thing about wargaming, is you can go anywhere in the world, and people just, you've got a connection straight away. So yes, definitely yes. I'm all up for travelling and playing in tournaments. I've already been to Sydney a couple of times for X-Wing tournaments. I had a Legion entry into the 2020 Worlds, but obviously with the world shut down, that kind of went by the wayside. But yeah, I'm all for it once we've got a bit more time in the family, and I can persuade my wife that these will be my Christmas and birthday presents. I'll definitely be hopefully going to stuff. So. Maybe a WA team in a team championship or something one day would be great.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate, Adam, that you'll probably have a different perspective on this question.
Yeah, slightly different. Probably not really plausible for me. Well, probably mainly because I'm not at that level. But yeah, just at this stage, realistically, I'm lucky to get a leave pass for a 1 or 2 day local event, let alone anything bigger than that.
Yeah,
I mean, might be nice at some stage, but yeah, not at this time, and yeah, realistically, financially, it's probably not practical either. Me.
Yep. And Sean?
I'm lucky that my kids are now university age, and I am good to travel wherever I may. I was supposed to go across to the Worlds that they had in England earlier this year, and the West Australian team that Gaussian was organising, but we had a late pullout and we didn't have any replacements, so the team didn't end up going. And I'd already gotten a pass to go.
Yes.
That was in October?
That was meant to be October for the World Open War.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would have been all up for it, but we flew back like the last week of September or something. I think it was like 2 weeks out or something ridiculous. It was just it was no big deal. It was just it was we should have had some backups, but no one been put forward. Yeah.
It's
and it probably worked out better anyway because I finished some work that I had to do for ECU. So it was all good.
Yeah, it's on the cards again for next year to consider and try and get some more prep in. But yeah, we'll because we also were also trying to organise or Goshen was trying to help organise the eastern states, because we'd actually tried to say, hey, Australia might actually want 2 spots because we're two separate communities if they've got space, and they put up 1 player for them, and so we went like, okay, well, we'll just do 1 Australian team and send them over, but that didn't work out on their end either, so we'll try again.
To be honest, I was going to say, to be honest, I was surprised when Goshen tapped me on the shoulder, because I'm not a top player. I'm a wacky, weird list player that I like to play off meta, and I'd have to play a very different army if I was going to go competitive worlds. You know.
Yeah, I was just sorry. Yeah, with Adam, I see those like going across these states. Money aside, if we all had money and stuff, I think going to these tournaments, like I always thought, I'm just going to get absolutely pounded and stuff. And it's just the going and playing against other people. Take the wacky list. You know, that's gonna throw people off, where they go, what the hell's going on here? I'm very much like, even just coming from Albany to go to the first tournament in Perth with you guys, it's a massive step. I didn't know anybody. I think John was heading up. I met him there, but you know, we'd only sort of connected through the game, and it's just, I think it's just more about community side, as you get to see that it's not just us. It's how everyone acts within a certain game system. Everyone seems to have the same attitude. So, yeah, no, I'm all big on, you know, just encouraging people just to go out and play and things. And even if it's just the one in your local area, you know, start there and don't feel like you know. I've only been playing this game for 2 years. I'm a competitive player in myself, but I don't think I bring overly competitive stuff, and I don't think I really, you know, I'm not that great a player. I just enjoy playing, and I want to be better, and I think that's what makes you better is pushing it. But yeah, the real thing is time and money, and you know, we all like to be if we are married, we like to stay married, and that's the hard bit. You know, you've got to do the right thing. It's easy to get the brownie points. It's easy to spend them. It's hard to get them. So, you know.
Yes,
I haven't come across a better crew than the Albany crew. You know, I've interacted with you guys for the last 2 years. And yeah, that last trip down for Southern Thrust was so much fun. You know, we'd go out in the evenings after playing for the day and had a few drinks and just the general sort of atmosphere down there is just so camaraderie, basically.
Yeah, it's a good. We've got a good crew, a good base crew. The guys who are driving it are a good group of people, and you just feel welcoming. And I think it'll survive. The bolt action will survive. You know, that's just, I think, just because of the people that are running it, and that's like every game situation. Anyway, off topic. I'll shut up.
Yeah.
That's all right. Both Russ and Nick for this one also are probably not. That in terms of travelling to anything, yeah, like Southern Thrust is the classic example for us locally here. They're like, absolutely, if they're available, they've got the ability to get down there. Yep, we'll do it. Anything beyond our border, a bit sketchy. Anything beyond the international border, even more sketchy, because that's just a time and materials thing for them. I would love to get out and do something a bit more, and you know, some of the ones over in the certainly the eastern states, and some of the other ones around the US and the UK. But again, young kids, time, money, materials, and making sure it all is all going to work. It's a bit of a juggling act. So now we come to the one we'll end on, which is, give me your best bolt action moment from a game that you've played. Go ahead, Bob.
Apart from any time that my P8 team actually takes a tank out from behind a building or something where it feels thematic and they've popped out and you kind of, you know, I think one time, I think it was a tournament in Perth, I got to have a 40k turn, so I think I had 10 or 12 order dice, and it was pretty much like second turn, not much has died, and I pulled all my dice out before he pulled any of his dice out. So I got to move everything of mine, shoot everything of mine before I even had a go. And we were just sitting there. It was one of those ones like, that's just statistically an anomaly, but it was quite funny. It was just one of those ones where you both just laugh by the end of it because there's not much you can really do about it. So yeah, that was one of my. That's right.
Yes, it does. It's rare, but it does happen. I think I can imagine like the other person at first. It's kind of like, oh, really, another one, and then by the end you're just like yeah, just pull it out, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. It's just it was quite fun.
What about you, Adam? As someone again who's newer within our event space, don't limit it to necessarily an event game, but what has been your highlight for Bolt Action?
Yeah, I was thinking that initially I thought my first tournament would be a highlight, but that's a bit boring. So, but then I remembered, I think at the last Dueling Aces, my partner Trent's plane airstrike pretty much dropped its bombs on us every time. And I think that even got a mention on one of the previous HMG podcasts.
It did.
So that was a nice cherry on top of a highlight of getting remembered for all the wrong reasons. But so that was interesting, at least. Memorable. If it was best, but
we will seek to remedy that. Dueling Aces will be back. So if Trent's up for another round of
if he's not too traumatized.
Yes. Sean?
Well, most recent in terms of what I can recall, best Bolt Action moment would have been, I think, the second game of Southern Thrust. Was I'll set it up first. My army that I took to Southern Thrust was fully mechanized German reconnaissance. Well, not quite reconnaissance. I had armies all in 250/10s. There was no foot sloggers. I had lots of little half tracks everywhere, and I had a Kubel Blitz as my tank. I had nothing in the way of big firepower. Kubel Blitz was it. Right, and guys with Panzerfausts. And this particular mission, the turn 2, before the game started, we had a bombardment, a preliminary bombardment. And the way you rolled, it happens to both sides or it doesn't happen at all. So we rolled and it was happening. He rolled his dice to see what he was going to do, what happened to his dice or to his units, and pretty much nothing, a pin here or a pin there. Then he started rolling to see what happened to mine. I lost in preliminary bombardment half my army. Right? So the half track that had my officer squad in it got hit, so the half track died. The officer squad inside died. The sniper team, I think that was no, it wasn't a sniper team. It was my Panzer Shrek team that was in the half track with the officer squad also died. My Kubel Blitz got hit and immobilized for the entire game. Right, so didn't get to move. I lost 3 of my 6 half tracks, and it really was half of my army was dead before turn 1 even started. And I can't remember for the life of me who the opponent was, but we were in tears. Well, I was in tears. I was laughing my head off, and he's on the other side of the table apologising. He's going, "I'm really sorry. This shouldn't be happening. I'm really sorry." And I'm just losing myself. I'm just laughing my head off because I didn't care. It was funny to see, and it was just me for the remainder of the game just trying to see what I could drag back, if anything, and it was just I just got annihilated. And all through the game he was just going, "I'm really sorry, it shouldn't have ended." And that was probably the best in terms of recent, because even though I was absolutely ripped to pieces, it was hilarious to watch.
That's actually a good point. That obviously being on the losing end more than the winning end, game says something about the game that you can still have a lot of fun even when you're losing. So
that's right.
That's a big thing.
That is very, very true. I do find that bolt action is because I've lost a lot in the time that I've been playing, and none of those losses have ever made me go, I don't want to play this game anymore. At least not seriously. Sometimes, yes, I've been like, nah, that was a horrible game. But I've never been in a position where I've had such a continuation of losses that have been so unsavory that I'm just like, no, I just don't want to play anymore. I've never had that, and I hope that virtually all, if not all, of our communities had the same, to the most that I can control that.
I think it's because you. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I'm with you, Daniel. I think it's a reflection of the community that we have here in Western Australia. I can name one, maybe two guys that sometimes I have questionable games that it's not enjoyable, but they're so few and far between, it's not worth even mentioning.
I think it's also the game itself, because you get to move around toy soldiers and make gun noises in your head or out loud when you shoot your tank and stuff. But I think it just brings you back to that childhood when you have your little bag of Green Army men that you were pushing around in the sand and doing that. And I think that's the game itself. You can't get angry at random dice chance stuff, because you're getting to move plastic soldiers around on a board, and it makes me feel like I'm 6 or 7 again. You know, that's what I enjoy about it. You know, I get to not have to be an adult, and the older I get, the more I'm trying to find things where I can act like a child and people don't judge me. So, you know, playing bolt action in a room full of men doing the same, people doing the same thing. I feel like we're all just being kids again, and no one's judging me. I can actually have some fun, you know. That's, I think, and if you were getting salty about, you know, that random where stuff just blows up and you're like, oh, can't believe it, you've got to go, oh, you know what? You just be happy for the other person. I think if you can hold that in, I think that's what most people seem to have with this game, is they have that attitude of, that's just funny, you know. Yep. That just happened, or, you know, you roll your one and your bombardment doesn't come in, or, you know, those things always happen, and most people seem to just laugh it off in this game. And I honestly think it's because of what you're actually playing. I think if you're taking it too seriously, this is not the game for you.
Yeah,
it's just rare as an adult. Adult to just have fun for fun's sake. It's like,
that's right.
It's nice.
I am reminded of one thing. I'm reminded of one tournament during the first edition bolt action, before anyone really sort of understood some of the nuances of the rules and things like that in tournaments. And I had a flamethrower team this is an American flamethrower team in a half track that foobarred, and they're not supposed to be able to do that they don't do that in the new rules. You don't do foobars but the TO at the time said, yeah, you foobarred, so gotta roll on the foobar table. So we rolled on the foobar table with a flamethrower who was in the back of a half track, who then proceeded to shoot the half track that he was in and blow the half track up from the inside. It was awesome.
You know what, they need to bring that rule back. That just sounds funny.
It was
just for the fun.
You wrote that down, Dan?
I was going to
say
snipers being able to ricochet a shot on a miss and kill themselves, and flamers blowing up a transport they're in, I think, are things that need to come into play. So like Russ's event, so he was playing a team event. It was Gary and him, and they just needed Dave to miss one shot that was left at one model, and they had won the game at that point. He turns to Gary and he reassures him and says, don't worry, Dave can't hit an elephant from this distance, it's fine. And that's a running joke that they have apparently in their group. Dave successfully hit and destroyed and killed the model that was needed, and they lost the game. So, but I don't have the details specifically of what it was in that space. But classic, we're just going to talk up his trend. It's fine. He always rolls ones, blah blah blah, and then just murders it. Nick had a very interesting highlight, which was 2018 Skulls in November, actually playing against Gary Daniford with a 1942 DAC list. It was stalling and he couldn't gain any momentum. Everything he was trying, he couldn't get anywhere. His armor was in reserve, and Gary also had a Firefly in reserve. The Firefly was essentially going to outgun the Panzer IV and the 222. But Nick decided to roll the 222 on his right flank in an attempt to assist and just create a bit of harassment. The next turn, Gary just simply rolls his Firefly on directly in front of the 222 as a counter. But because it was the next turn, and I don't know whether it was Gary forgot or he had some other reasoning, the 222 recce's away and disappears. Then the Panzer IV immediately is able to roll on, and it one-shots the Firefly on the side and manages to kill it. And it actually was a turning point then for the game, which brought it back from what was going to be a horrific loss to a minor win. But a big highlight, because Nick thought that game was done and dusted. But yeah, it was enough to turn it around. So, well, so I mean, that does it for the first round of questions that I've got for this community spotlight. I really appreciate all of you being on the show, and for those that submitted some answers via text earlier. If there are other things and questions that the people would like, people listening to the podcast would like asked, we will probably host some more of these as the year rolls on, and we'll get potentially the same guys, potentially different guys, depends on who's available to have a chat. But thank you very much for your time, everybody, and we are at just over the 2-hour recording mark, so thank you very much for your patience. And to everyone else, this has been the HMG Podcast, and you will catch us again on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having us.